Wait, what did you just say? He froze, his hands covered in dust and grease, staring at her as if she'd lost her mind. She leaned against the wooden counter, eyes sharp and teasing. "You heard me?" she said softly. "Fix this ancient radio right now and I'll spend a night with you." The shop went silent. Even the wind that usually whistled through the cracks seemed to hold its breath. Viewers, before we find out what happens next, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories of Kindness for more emotional stories like this one. The old repair shop smelled like rust, oil, and fading memories. It was a quiet corner in a forgotten town where few people stopped anymore. Ethan, the man behind the counter, wasn't much of a talker. Once a talented sound engineer, he'd retreated from the noise of the world after losing everything in a tragic accident 5 years ago. Music had once been his soul, but now it only reminded him of what he'd lost. The only sound in his life came from broken radios and static-filled memories. Then came her, a woman with emerald eyes and a coat that looked too expensive for a place like this. She placed an old, dusty radio on the counter, the kind made from dark mahogany wood with gold dials and a cracked frequency display. "Can you fix it?" she asked. Ethan studied it carefully, recognizing the model. It was a 1940s shortwave radio, rare, valuable, but almost impossible to restore without original parts. "I can try," he said quietly, "but it might take time." She tilted her head, a faint smirk on her lips. "I don't think you understand. I need it fixed tonight." Ethan chuckled. "That's not how things work. These take patience." She crossed her arms, leaned closer, and with a mischievous glint in her eye, whispered, "Then let's make it interesting. Fix this ancient radio right now and I'll spend a night with you." He looked up, stunned. Was this a joke, a dare? He wasn't used to people talking to him like that, certainly not beautiful strangers. But something about her tone wasn't playful. It was hiding something deeper. Her challenge wasn't about flirtation. It was desperation. He saw it in her trembling hands, and the way her eyes darted toward the radio like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Ethan took a deep breath. "All right," he said finally. "Deal." The next few hours passed like a silent storm. The rain outside tapped against the windows while Ethan worked with focus and precision. Every screw, every wire, every flicker of sound mattered. She sat quietly nearby, watching him. He noticed how her eyes glistened in the dim light, filled with something fragile, sorrow. "Who did it belong to?" he asked at one point. She hesitated. "My grandfather," she whispered. "He built it for my grandmother when they were young. He used to play her favorite songs every night before bed. He passed away last winter, and tomorrow would have been their anniversary." Her voice broke. Ethan stopped what he was doing. Suddenly, the strange request made sense. She didn't want to spend a night with him. She wanted to spend a night listening to her grandfather's voice again. He redoubled his efforts, determined to make it work. Hours slipped away. The air smelled of old wires and soldering metal. Sparks flew. The old circuits resisted, then came to life, flickering with faint static. She leaned forward, eyes wide. "Is it?" she whispered. Ethan adjusted a final knob, and a soft melody burst through the static, an old jazz tune, warm and crackling with life. The woman covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. "That's it," she breathed. "That's their song." Ethan watched as she clutched the radio, listening, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He smiled faintly. "Guess I did it," he said quietly. She turned to him, her eyes red but glowing with gratitude. "You did more than fix it," she said softly. "You brought someone back for me." She took a deep breath, walked to him, and hugged him tightly. "Thank you." Ethan froze, then slowly returned the embrace. It had been years since someone had hugged him, years since anyone had looked at him with that kind of warmth. When she finally pulled away, she smiled sadly. "You've earned that night," she whispered. "But not the way I meant before." She took off her coat, set it aside, and sat near the radio as the music filled the room. "Stay with me," she said. "Just listen." That's all. And so they sat together, the melody washing over them, two broken souls mended by sound. When the final note faded, the silence felt peaceful instead of empty. She turned to him and said, "You know, you should fix more than just radios. You should fix people too." The next morning, she left quietly, leaving behind the old radio and a note. "You helped me say goodbye. Now it's your turn to start again." Ethan stared at it for a long time, then turned on the radio once more. The static was softer now, like the world was speaking again. And from that day on, the little shop was never silent. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Stories of Kindness, where every story reminds us that even broken things can sing again.